Hey, welcome to X-Oriente, the new voice of Brotherhood. I am your worshipful caster, Eric.
And I am your other worshipful caster, Jason. Hi, everyone.
Hello. I hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving.
It was fantastic. How was yours?
Meat filled. We went to we for the first time we went out. I've been making Thanksgiving dinner. Actually, not me, but my wife or my mother or some family member for the last 42 years, as long as I could remember. This is the first time I've ever gone out. And my best friend from grade school, Phil, his family always went out. I think still goes out. But it was something that we never did before, but we decided to do it this time. And we went to this place called Fogo de Chao, which is a Brazilian steakhouse. And if you've never been to one, I think they're called chiaroscuros. And what they do is you pay a fee, and you get a little card on your table, and you flip the card to the green side, and they just keep coming around with skewers of meat of all different varieties, sausages and chicken and beef and turkey and all kinds of stuff. And they just slice off a slice and throw it on your plate, and and then they give you ridiculous sides and stuff like that. And it was good. It was good. It's funny. Yeah. I had surgery a few years ago, so I don't I can't eat like normal people can eat. So right. As a result, it's always lost. Like all you can eat kind of deals. It's a bad deal for me, but for my family,
yeah,
it's good.
I had my wife and I. Neither of us cook because we live in downtown DC, and there is no reason to cook when you live in a neighborhood such as ours. So we actually went to Whole Foods, and at Whole Foods, you got a 2-pound turkey breast, a pound of mashed potatoes, a pound of stuffing, and then gravy, green beans, and cranberry sauce, which I think is disgusting. But it came with all this stuff.
What?
For a couple bucks. Yeah, cranberry sauce is of Satan.
It is of the gods.
Terrible
Oh my
crap.
God.
You can throw that right in the garbage with mushrooms. Burn them all off the planet. So we got that. And actually, it was really nice. And all you had to do is reheat it. We actually managed to reheat everything so that it came out all at once, which was nice. And had a really just nice, calm, just the two of us Thanksgiving, which we haven't had in a long time. So it was really, really fun.
That's cool. Yeah, no, I think you're completely wrong about cranberry. Here's what's interesting. So I had this thing. So when Fran and I first got married, my wife, she made for me the next day something called a leftover sandwich. This is what she called it. And it's basically a sandwich, like a normal sandwich, turkey, stuffing, cranberry sauce, and some melted cheese or a little bit of bacon or something like that. Oh my God.
But cranberry sauce.
No, it was fantastic. It was fantastic. And later on, that was that's the real, to me, that's real Thanksgiving. That's it's the next day.
Leftover.
It's that leftover.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
fantastic.
Yeah. So I always wanted to host Thanksgiving because then I would be in the position to have leftovers. And when I work, it's funny when I worked for a time. I worked for a summer at Amico. So I worked in their advertising department. Actually, I was the project that I was working on over the summer was a horrible flash game from a horrible movie. They were doing a movie tie-in with Wild Wild West. Do you remember that terrible Will Smith?
Terrible.
Yeah, it was awful.
Listen, okay, it's a terrible movie, but I still enjoy watching it.
Okay, that's my cranberry sauce. But it's
don't blame me.
But I was but they had a cafeteria, and they on the menu was they called it a Thanksgiving sandwich, which was exactly what this is. Sure. And I was 3 days a week. That's what I had for lunch. 3 days a week was this.
I was just gonna say if Amico had their own cafeteria, I was just thinking it's just a bag of chips and some beef jerky.
That's right, Slim Jims and yeah.
Right. Yeah. And you could take all the
and a Snickers
you want on the way out. That's
No,
nice.
they had a nice. And I actually saw the executive dining room, and it was pretty sweet. But they're gone. I mean, they're not in. So that building, it used to be called the Amico Building. It's now called the Aon Building, and Aon,
Yeah.
it's famous Chicago landmark. And
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely. That's kind of cool.
so, anything going on in Masonry this week?
Well, let's see. There's lots of stuff going on in DC. Unfortunately, I can't really talk about it because I am too close to the situation. But that being said, there are sources out there.
All right,
You could
let's not
look
talk
up.
about that. Let's just. But you guys are having Grand Lodge this week, right?
No, we had it. We
you
had it
had
last
it.
week.
Oh, okay. Okay, good.
So our annual communication passed us by eventfully on Saturday. And so we elected everybody moved on up. And Adam Tager, who is a fan of the show, I think, Adam Tager was elected to the bottom of our line, which was a great win for Freemasonry in total.
Excellent.
Well done. Now, Right Worshipful Brother Tager. Other than that, not much. It's getting to be installation season, so it's going to get real busy real fast here.
Oh, okay.
We have installation. I have installations to go to pretty much starting next weekend. It just rockets into Christmas. So
Oh,
it's
really?
going to be.
So do we need to go dark during December?
No, I mean I don't think so. I mean, but I know that coming up, I've got a bunch of installations. It's going to be nuts. Like I said, the installations here, the good ones, like Federal Lodge number 1, their installation is the greatest installation on the planet. They hold it at the Belmont Mansion, which is actually the headquarters of the Eastern Star. And it's here in DuPont Circle, and it's a beautiful Beaux Arts mansion, built in 1905, and it's just awesome. And they put on oh my god spread with champagne and good wines and lots of food, and it's a black tie deal, and it is. My wife isn't a huge going to Mason events kind of a person. She will never miss a Federal Lodge installation.
Wow.
It's that good of a party.
Can you take some pictures?
I certainly can and certainly will. It's an amazing time. So I got that to look forward to. That's coming up in a couple weeks. I think that's the 9th. I don't know. I barely read these things. I just sort of just grab my boots and go. So,
Cool. So
lots of fun though.
We have Stephen Baker is in the is making comments. So welcome, Stephen. A couple bits of housekeeping. We have a
Keep the
new
house.
Yeah, we have a new executive producer. We want to welcome Adam Roth. He just
Hi, Adam. Thank you very much.
He just pledged today. It's an awesome thing. And so we're going to try an experiment at Masonic Week this week. We're going to create what we're calling the Blue Room. And what I've done is normally I just get a regular room. This time I've booked a suite. And we're going to try to have multiple podcasters kind of coming in and doing, versions of their podcast and like live versions and crossovers and stuff like that during Masonic Week. So I'm not entirely sure how that's going to work yet. We're still kind of working it out because like the suite is not.
Grab your boots and go.
It's not a suite like like the Golden Age of Hollywood type suite. It's sort of a mini suite. So we'll have to see how we can set up like a little studio in there and stuff like that. But we're gonna try to do that. And then what else? What was the other piece of housekeeping that I wanted to talk about?
Wait, when is that? That's
going to be February, the week of February 7th.
There you go. All right.
So that'll be then. And trying to remember, there was one other thing that I wanted to mention in terms of, we have a new website.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So
We
if you
do.
go to so if you go to xoriente.com, we've completely redesigned the website, and now we have a blog. And I'm trying to post to it at least once a week. And this is just stuff that's, maybe there's just not as much material or not enough to really warrant a show episode or something like that, but just some kind of interesting thoughts and stuff like that. And we have a couple of like the shows that we have in planning are really interesting. So we're going to try for next week to do a show on sort of what morality is from a psychological perspective. Could be really, really cool. But I want to, what I'm doing is I'm trying to reproduce some experiments that were done in moral psychology and get some footage of that. So if I can do that, then we'll be able to do that, next week.
John Rourke just actually posted and said, as long as the mini bar has the mini suite has a mini bar, I'm there.
Well, he's bringing the booze. I'm
Whatever.
bringing the
He's
equipment.
banned from our mini bar because if he gets into our mini bar, we're broke.
No.
You know how much those little bottles cost?
Oh, I know. Well,
and Rourke is a big guy and he drinks a lot.
we're gonna bring
an irresponsible amount.
Big bottles of scotch. And you know what? Costco. Do you guys have Costco out there?
Many Costco's.
Really? You're not savages out there.
No. We're quite tame.
So I went to Costco today. They now have their single malt Speyside. It's I'm told it's amazeballs.
Did you get it?
I did. I got 2 bottles of it.
Oh, nice. Did you try it yet? No.
No, because I do not like to do the show drunk.
That's a shame.
Drinking, but not drunk.
Okay, so I saw it in the store the other day, and I thought this could be good or really bad.
I've been told it's very, very good. We should do a show. We'll do a show on alcohol. We'll do a show.
That's a great idea.
Because
it's a place where I shine.
Exactly. So this is kind of a light episode. It might go a little short. It's okay.
Sure.
But I want to do. I came across last week. I came across a short story. So I love stories about Freemasonry.
Not a short story. It's a novella.
It's a novella. Okay, it's a novella, and it was my friend Doug Rapp. So Doug is a brother of mine in my lodge, and he told me about this. And it turned out that I had bought the book. So the story is called If This Goes On. It's by Robert Heinlein, who's one of my favorite sci-fi writers, and in fact, like when I read Stranger in a Strange Land back as a freshman in high school, that was like my Catcher in the Rye. Like that set me on the path to geekdom, like right there and then. I was, from that day on, I started grokking things. I mean, if you've ever heard the word grok, like GROK, to grok something, Heinlein was the one who invented that. If you've ever seen Starship Troopers, that was one of Heinlein's short stories. That was Heinlein's, Heinlein had this like sort of flirtation with fascism. Like he kind of like, he had this sort of like, he sort of admired the aesthetics of it, while at the same time being completely horrified by it, it's a very authory thing to do. Like, Stephen King kind of does that all the time with stuff, but
sure. I mean, look at it. The Nazis had Hugo Boss as a designer, and he did a really good job.
He did a very good job. Yeah. Yeah. Those are snappy,
there you go,
snappy
kids.
uniforms.
That's your trivia for today.
Yeah. Hugo Boss, member of the Nazi Party.
Designed the SS uniforms.
Absolutely. So, anyway, so this story, is by Robert,
because that's a fact.
So the story is by Robert Heinlein. It was written in 1958, and as I was reading it, I got about, I don't know, maybe a third of the way into it. And I'm like, how has this not been made into a movie? How does this not get made into a movie? Because it is like, first of all, so the premise of the story is that the United States has been taken over by a theocracy, and the tone of the theocracy, it's very sort of fundamentalist, evangelical, sort of thumping the Old Testament type of Christian theocracy. Very much like if you've ever seen
Christianity of the Old West.
Maybe, but more of that sort of like 1920s.
Well, yeah, it kind of got me as the kind of old westy thing. I feel like it was Bible thumpers kind of that way, but it kind of crossed with some elements of Scientology. You can really feel some Scientology in that book.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Well, yeah. So what's interesting because Heinlein was a contemporary of L. Ron Hubbard. And in fact, there's this famous apocryphal story about how they were in a bar and together, and L. Ron Hubbard bet Heinlein $100 that he could create his own religion. And it's an untrue story, but it still, it still makes the rounds, and
Sure.
and of course later he sends them his $100, the $100 bill in the mail. But they knew each other. I mean, they were contemporaries, and Heinlein at the time, this is back in sort of the golden age of science fiction when, most science fiction stories were published in Strange Stories magazine. There were these sci-fi mags that were so a lot of the language in it is still kind of it's still kind of rooted in the 1950s, right? So it doesn't like the dialogue and stuff would need to be kind of modernized a little bit, but but the feeling of this theocracy reminded me a lot of the recent show Handmaid's Tale. Have you seen the remake? That's on what Amazon? Is that an Amazon thing or Amazon Video or Netflix? Yeah, so one of those streaming services. But that was sort of what it reminded me of, and there's a group that is kind of fighting for there's sort of this underground that is fighting against it, and they are none other than the Freemasons.
They call them the Cabal too.
The Cabal, yeah, they call them the Cabal, but they're really the Freemasons. And what's interesting is that he goes. Part of the story contains a depiction of an initiation.
The apprentice degree.
Yeah. And he probably got based on the tone of the ritual, he probably got Bernard's Light on Masonry, but he had a pretty good expose.
Yeah,
because
it was pretty good.
Yeah, it wasn't completely like wackadoodle like you see sometimes.
Right.
With Masonry.
Like Dan Brown writes.
Yeah, right, and but I loved this story. I loved it because first of all, it's just good writing, and he's a really good writer. It's a good plot, and I just kept thinking to myself like, this would make an awesome movie. If you sort of took Handmaid's Tale and combined it with The Kingsman.
Okay.
Right?
Maybe.
With maybe a little bit of Battlestar Galactica thrown in.
Yeah, I mean,
put it in a pressure cooker.
Well, my impression of it is, to me, it reads, it actually reads a little bit like A Clockwork Orange. And so, and it reads that way because, like you said, he makes up words, and so there are unfamiliar verbs and things like that he just makes up. But it also reads a little bit like Foucault's pendulum. Foucault's pendulum. And so if I didn't know anything about Freemasonry, I'd be really confused about what was going on during the little initiation part. And it would have been like Foucault's pendulum. So if you don't know anything about Rosicrucianism or Freemasonry or a number of other fraternal orders, you're going to be really lost in that book because it's almost like a fever dream how he writes about it. And he knows what he's writing about. He's really, really good. But it took me a while of being in the fraternity and belonging to other groups to all of a sudden go, oh my God, he was writing about all of that. That's amazing. That's so cool. And now I have a real appreciation for the book. But the first time I read the book, I was young and I had no idea what was going on. Mm-hmm. And I was like, this guy just writes words on a page and has no idea where it's going. and just wants to confuse me through the book. But yeah, so Heinlein kind of reminds me of that. This book is really cool. I really like it a lot. I think I'm on the fifth chapter now, but it's good. It's really good.
Yeah. So high recommendation. What I think is I want to see this made into a film. I really do. Cause I think it's cinematic. It's sort of a story of our time. Like it's very contemporary, right? Where we're kind of, there's this, authoritarian struggle that is kind of going through our society. And but
is it too much, Eric? Because you've got The Handmaid's Tale out there now. You've got, what's the Philip K. Dick, book that's now
the
Man in the High Castle.
Yeah,
Man in the High Castle. Yeah, Man in the High Castle. You've got trying to think of other kind of authoritarian dystopian futures. The dance card's kind of full. You know what I'm saying? Like, are you going to make a new point? Is new story going to be told? I don't know. I think that this is a good book and it stands on its own. But I think as a movie, I don't know how successful it would be with the market saturated as it is with dystopian, authoritarian shows.
I think it would be incredibly successful, and here's why. It's got the Masons. Right?
Fair.
Okay.
That's fair.
No. So here's my argument.
All right.
Yes.
Argue away.
I will say, we do have this right now, a Hollywood flirtation with authoritarianism. We're taking on sort of what if the Nazis won? We're taking on, what if the religious right sort of took over the country in The Handmaid's Tale, right? But all of those are these very sort of nuanced, tortured, sort of examinations of what the implications of an authoritarian society is like, and sort of the hopelessness and, like, especially the Man in the High Castle, right? You get the sense of like, there's nowhere to go. There is nowhere to hide, like the only place you can go is Canada, if you can get over the border. Right.
Right.
And, and in the, I think it was Handmaid's Tale where they, like that's sort of the goal is like everybody, if you're trying to get out of the society, you try to escape to Canada where there's a government in exile, like a United States in exile.
Why can't Canada be the bad guy for once? Why does it always have to be us?
I know. Well, yeah. It's because we don't have socialized medicine. No, I'm kidding. Yeah. So anyway, but what this story is an adventure, and that's sort of a different take on it. So, Star Wars kind of is a similar type of narrative, right? It's just that they just hit the subject so lightly that they don't really explore sort of like, all right, so let's say that you have an evil Emperor Palpatine, right? And you have the dark side of the Force, and you have the Sith, and you have all of this stuff. What does it mean for the people who have to live in that empire, right? And it's not real. I mean, they don't really go into it too deeply, right? It's a very shallow examination. No. It's like, it's black and white, and it's literally black and white,
Right.
It's Luke Skywalker in white and Darth Vader in black. And it's.
I mean, they imply that it's pretty bad.
They do, but you never really see like what the consequences are. And you never really kind of go into, I mean, Lucas with the Jedi was, he was sort of like modeling it off the samurai, right? So, you have this sort of Zen thing in the Jedi, and it's sort of, Yoda, speaking sideways, and you get a sense for like goodness and non-attachment and sort of these sort of somewhat vaguely Buddhist ideals in Star Wars, but it's so light that it's really hard, it's really hard to sort of take it and go, okay, how can I apply this to my own life? But I think absolutely. But I think this story goes deep enough into it to really give you a sense that,
Right.
So for example, one of the things that is interesting about Heinlein is that he didn't really have, and most science fiction writers at that time didn't really understand the implications of what it would be like for every one of us to have a smartphone all the time.
Right.
And the type of surveillance that subjects us to, as well as, as a means of social control, which is probably a topic for another show. But, he had other technologies, so like in his world, like people are, like psychologists have honed their art to the point where, they can hook you up to a machine and change your attitude,
Right.
with a pull of a lever or something like that. But this is 1958 tech. But I always thought that it was really interesting that he not only got the sort of the character of the initiation right in the story, in the copy, but I think he had a really profound understanding of what the core values of Freemasonry are.
Well, sure, and he also understood the point of the initiation as well. I mean, he even comes out and says it, that most of this was symbolic in nature. And I mean, I think that he understood deeply what the whole point, what we're trying to get at, what we're trying to get to an initiate. He understood, and it's really clear in the writing. And in fact, I would venture to guess that if he was a Mason, he'd probably been incredibly disappointed by his initiation because it didn't live up to how good he wrote it.
Yeah.
And
well, he
and
wasn't.
I think
He wasn't a Mason.
I know he wasn't. Yeah, and it's a shame because he had the right idea. Certainly.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I just thought that from my own perspective, like I've always been fascinated with this idea of the conspiracy of good, right? So like Kingsman, which is a terrible movie, fun but terrible.
It's not the headiest.
It's ridiculous, yeah. But Kingsman, what was interesting about Kingsman is like so here you have this incredibly secret society, created on kind of what is a noble premise, right? Is that like, oh, we lost all of our sons in World War I, and so we've created this international intelligence agency that does good in the world, right? But yet they never go into the reasons, like the values, right? What makes a man want to do this, right?
Right.
And in the story that they tell in the Kingsman, it's just sort of like, well, your dad was one, so you're going to be one, and it's sort of, it's very much the same as like the Luke Skywalker story, like, you must walk in the path of your father and learn the ways of the Force, it's sort of this destiny, which is part of Joseph Campbell's like hero saga. I get that, right? And that's a big thing in Hollywood, right? There's a book, if you ever want to read a great book, it's called The Hero's Journey. Yeah, it's a book about writing, and it started out as a memo at Disney, and it just sort of evolved into a book, and now it's like in its 6th or 7th edition, and they just keep adding to it and stuff. But it's sort of like it's about how to write.
You live in Los Angeles. You live in Los Angeles or New York, and you see people in a Starbucks on their laptop. That's probably what they're doing. Is they're writing according to that book.
Yeah, I mean it's a very
every wannabe screenwriter writes with that thing.
Yeah, and the author, like they did this review. So this was after the movie Hercules, which kind of failed at the box office. So what they did was they looked at every Disney animated movie, The Lion King, and all the animated movies, and what they found is that when they followed the hero's journey, like Joseph Campbell's structure, movies did really well. Right. So Mulan did really well, Beauty and the Beast did really well. Like all these, when they follow that structure, Aladdin did great, right? They all follow that structure. When you stray from it, that's when you run into problems. and the movies did not do as well. So now there's this whole like thing at Disney, like you will follow this archetype, you will follow this thing, or your movie won't get made, right? So you see a lot of these movies that are kind of like they're heavy-handed in that regard, and I understand why, right? And for those people who don't who haven't read about this or seen this, but basically there's this very old archetype of a story arc, right? Where it's like there's it's like the normal world, and then something, the hero is like in the normal world, and then something disrupts the normal world, something happens, and he's called to adventure, and he rejects the call. And then he, just think about Lord of the Rings, right? It's a classic example of this, right? He rejects the call, and then he meets a mentor.
Brought back to the call by a mentor.
He's brought back to the call by a mentor because he finds he can't go back to the normal world anymore because the normal world has changed. Then he can't go back,
right? Because now he knows,
right?
Right.
So then he has to go. He gets a magical object. He meets allies along the way. He meets the villain. There's a final showdown, and then there's like a little denouement. So it's a very like
and he becomes greater than he was before.
Yeah, right. And he has
rises to a level that he didn't think was possible, but was inside of him all the time.
Exactly. He has to face his inner demons before he can defeat the enemy. Right. That's they call it the Chapel Perilous. Right. So it's a very old archetype. It goes back to Homer. And even before that, I mean, it goes to Gilgamesh, right? It's as old as mankind. And so, but this is a little bit different, right? This sort of takes, this is sort of an adventure that it has some of those elements, but what's really interesting is you get a sense because he is leaning on the history and the culture of Freemasonry, right? You can start to explore the values and the like the tenets. Like, so when you think about our lectures and think about the tenets of Freemasonry and the virtues of Freemasonry and the like what you learn in the second degree, right? All of those things, right, have a really, in our society of today where the biggest problem that we have is, when is my iPhone 10 going to ship? Like it doesn't have as much meaning as when you're, it's kind of like that song, Life During Wartime, right? This ain't no party. This ain't no disco, right? It's exactly. when you're removed from that environment and you're kind of in that really, that really sort of heady, where you're in that, you're sort of, you're in a rebellion against a society that has total ability to surveil you, right? And so you have to be super secret, and you literally have to trust your brother with your life. What does that really mean? And he sort of explores some of those ideas.
Yeah. It's so good, by the way. It's so good. Yeah. What if your obligations and your oaths really meant something? Yeah. What if it had life or death hanging in the balance because of them? And yeah, you're 100% right. And he's setting it up already in the early stage I'm in the novella. But you can tell those are the stakes, which is great, which is really, really cool.
And he mentions, it's really interesting. He mentions just sort of in passing that they had to purge the Brotherhood.
Right. Yeah. All right. So now you made me, hold on. So as I've gone through this, I've made some little highlighted passages. Here we go. So this is from the third chapter. I understand, too, that our own fraternity, in the early days when it was being purged and tempered for the ordeal to come, many times had blood on the floors of lodge rooms. I don't know such records were destroyed.
Yeah.
So awesome.
Yeah.
Another, and just previous to this passage, I had highlighted this. The Cabal was every bit as careful in evaluating the character, persona, and psychological potentialities of a prospective brother as the service was in measuring a prospective intelligence officer. And the two types were as unlike as geese and goats. That's so awesome. So it's we talk about this, right? It's guarding the West Gate, and like there, and what he's talking about there is that in this time they've perfected the art of guarding the West Gate, and just previous to this they talk about it. And I don't think I highlighted the passage, but they talked about how like if a man wants to come in, those are the exact people they reject, which is fantastic.
Yeah,
I mean it's just great.
Yeah.
Another.
So Chris is just asking, for those who didn't come in at the beginning, which movie book is this? This is called If This Goes On. It's a novella that was written by Robert Heinlein. It's in a book called Revolt in 2100. So he wrote several stories in this sort of world, and you can get it. You can find the story in that book.
Go buy it now, really. Another passage I highlighted. Which is great. Which is he's talking about the process of his initiation into the Brotherhood. Utter letter perfection was required, and there was an amazing a lot to memorize. Talking about the ritual, that's just awesome. It's great. Utter letter perfection, which will make every grand lecturer in the world's heart sing. Because if you don't get utter perfection, I'm assuming they kill you. But you know.
Well,
it's hard times in this book.
But here's the thing: like in a world where you can't write anything down, right? That becomes important. That becomes an important skill.
Sure, right. You know, I think my last thought on this book, to be honest, because I'm not far enough into it. But my last quick thought is that I highlighted one passage, and this is in the very, very beginning. And it's, to me, these words are so amazing. They're so good. And it's the main character who writes Heinlein writes in the first person, and his main character is sort of this goody two shoes. He's sort of he's a member of the Praetorian Guard. He's an elite soldier guarding the president / prophet. And he is, he went to West Point, all this stuff, he's supposed to be this shining example of the faith and what it means to be an American at this time in this book. And his roommate is a little bit darker, and his roommate is telling him like, well, have you ever taken any higher level understanding classes? Have they kind of read you into these things? And he's like, no, not at all. And then his roommate says, well, that's because you're too black and white. Like you're too perfect. And so when you're too perfect, they can't tell you what the real world is really like. So you'll never get to those higher things. And in that, this is it. He talks about how, he has to act casual and do the things that he does all the time. Otherwise, he'll come under the thumb. And this is what he says is that, you are too perfect, and such men are dangerous. If you think about that, it's
1958.
1958, right? And what it means is that if you live your life, if you are a good person, and you really do ride the straight and narrow, you become a threat to other people, because such things lead to power. They lead to influence, and there's no blemish to take advantage of. And that's exactly what he's talking about here, is that you got to give people a little bit of blemish, so that they can feel like they have one over on you. And the moment they don't have one over on you, they will work as hard as they possibly can to crush you, because you're too perfect, and such men are dangerous. It's so profound. It's such a cool little phrase.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
I want that on my gravestone, by the way. It's my epitaph.
Such men are dangerous.
Yeah. No, you are too perfect, and such men. The such men are dangerous part will be really small, and it'll be part, but you are too.
You're
perfect.
too perfect.
That's right up on that.
Jason Van Dyke.
And my name,
right?
the
dates.
Smaller.
Yeah. Such men are dangerous.
And maybe the dates. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So, but a great book, I'm loving it so far. I'll give you a full book report after I'm done. But okay. I'm loving it so far.
I just think that it would make an awesome movie, because then, like, not to give the ending away at all, which I'm not, but, You know, it has many of the elements that make for a good, you know, James Bond movie or, you know, Star Wars type adventure and things like, you know, like you really get a sense of, you know, that it has a good, like, it has a good arc. It has a, you know, it's sort of classic sci-fi, but it has a good, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. So, and by the way, like he's written some amazing, you know, like if you've ever, you've probably seen the movie Starship Troopers, but,
which
reading
is
the book,
amazing movie.
It's actually, it's not bad. It's not the best. It's like it's a little violent, like overly, like gratuitously violent. Yeah, I know.
Paul Verhoeven. It's
a Verhoeven,
gratuitously
right.
violent, but it's gratuitously violent on purpose. Like Verhoeven uses violence to, at first you think like, oh, I'm going to go and see this action movie and it's going to be all honky dory, and then he goes, yeah, it's an action movie and I'm going to make you want to throw up. And he does it on purpose because he wants you to understand that, like, yeah, you're here rooting for this violence and this action, but I'm going to make it just a little bit uncomfortable for you.
Yeah, well,
I dig that about him.
If you actually read the book, the book Starship Troopers, he alludes to a lot of the stuff that Verhoeven shows you, right? Like,
interesting.
Like because you know, in this world that Heinlein writes, you know, you're fighting against this alien that just wants to out and out destroy you, and so they're, you know, like like people are just, you know, they're just losing people left and right, and he, you know, he'll just say that in a kind of in almost a very sterile way, like, oh, you know, we lost all the men, but Verhoeven shows you that, you know, like so it's I understand like why they did it. It's just that, you know, the problem is just like you take a book like that, and you know, which is a short read. Like if you ever read Starship Troopers, it's a pretty short book.
Yeah.
But you really have to, you know, it's sort of a hard movie to, it's a hard book to sort of turn into a movie, into a 2-hour movie. Like it would probably work better as a miniseries, right? Because you see the I mean, basically what it is sort of the story of this society that because they're in total war, like a war of survival, how they have to go from sort of a democratic consumer culture, suburban type life to, you know, everything's militarized and everything's, you know, so like in the book, in the Starship Troopers world, they kind of touch on it a little bit, but in that world, only, and the veterans are going to love to hear this, only veterans vote.
Right.
Right. But to do your, you know, to be a veteran, to qualify as a veteran, it's like the Roman idea, you know, you have to 20 years.
That's right.
Like you got to pull in a full career, and then you get the right to vote. That's your, you know, that's your franchise, right? You get the right to vote. So yeah, it's a, you know, he has always written some really interesting, you know, books. Like he wrote a book in the 80s. It was I think it was either the late 70s. It might've been like 1979, called Friday, which is about a female secret agent replicant. Like she was a replicant. She was an android who was a secret courier. And it sort of started to explore some of these ideas of like, you know, what does it mean to be human? So like if you've seen the Blade Runner sequel, right? That's a big theme in that movie. Like, you know,
I have not. And if you say a word, I will come through this computer and kill you because I want to see it so bad.
Okay. So here's the ending. Finney dies. The whale wins.
I hate you so much. I hate you so much. The worst. You're the worst. The worst.
Yeah.
Single worst.
But this is one of those, you know, I thought that this story, like it had the arc was just long enough and just complicated enough that I think you could make a really great 2-hour movie out of it.
Sure.
I don't even know that a series would be, you know, there's probably not enough there to make a series out of it, but 2-hour movie would be just perfect.
Yeah. I mean, it's great so far. So
cool.
all right.
So again, welcome to Adam Roth, our newest X-Oriente executive producer. And if you'd like to
Hi, Adam.
become an executive producer, and we'd love you to become an executive producer, please go to our Patreon page. It's www.patreon.com/X-Oriente. And your pledge helps us put the show on, helps pay for the bandwidth that allows us to do it live and do video and do special events and all kinds of other cool stuff. And we're going to be developing in 2018. We've been talking about doing some really cool swag, which we'll be doing. And we're in production now for some exclusive content that'll only be available on the Patreon site to the executive producers. So other than that, if you like what you hear on the show or you want to give us what your thoughts are, there are a lot of ways that you can reach us. You can drop us a line at xoriente@gmail.com and send us a traditional email if you're old school. You can leave a comment on our Facebook page. You can now leave a comment or contact us through our swanky new website at xoriente.com. We would love to hear from you and tell us, tell us what you want to hear more of, less of. I mean, we want to know. This is a dialogue, and we want to keep the conversation going. Anything else?
No, what you said.
Cool. So, next week we'll probably got maybe 2 more shows in us, till the end of the year. And then we'll take a short break over the holidays and rest and recharge and write. We're going to be writing shows over that time period.
What, by the way, just one notification, looking at the calendar, Hanukkah this year
Hanukkah.
is when?
Good question. It's weird because
Hanukkah moves around.
It does move around. Let's see. My guess is it's going to be really late because we've had late holidays this year. But let's see. Yeah, Hanukkah starts December 12th, I think.
Oh, okay. Not as late as I thought.
Which is not. Yeah, it's not terrible.
No.
Last year it was pretty
good.
early. Last year I think it was like
it was. It was
beginning
really early.
Yeah, beginning of December.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah.
Yeah,
So
that works.
we'll get out of Hanukkah by the time people start going away for Christmas. So, which is interesting because I actually might be out of the country during that week. So,
Me too.
where are you going?
I'm going to Germany.
Oh, fun.
Going to Germany for Christmas and New Year's.
Oh, excellent.
Be in the Vaterland. Frankfurt and Berlin. Super fun.
Excellent.
Very much looking forward to it. And then for spring break this year, I gave up my tropical destination and got Amsterdam, Paris, and London.
Wow.
In exchange.
Wow. Cool. Yeah, I'm going to try to do
what
something like that.
Yeah. Figure I got to go visit these places before the terrorists blow it up.
Ouch.
That's only half a joke.
Ouch.
Too soon.
Too soon? Yeah, okay. Cool. So anyway, until next week, thanks everybody. Oh, and by the way, if you like the show, tell your friends about us. You can get us on iTunes. We're on Stitcher Radio. Pretty much anywhere you can get a podcast. You can listen to episodes right from the X-Oriente site. You can either you can watch the video or stream the audio on xoriente.com. And if you want to use anything that you hear on the show as part of like a lodge education program or something like that, we're happy to for you guys to do that. Just let us know that you're doing it so we know where it's ending up and stuff. And we can kind of we try to track stuff so that we know like who's listening and what people like and stuff like that. So thanks again.
We're on a little hero's journey of our own.
Exactly. So so until then, stay subscribed and keep on keeping on. Fiat Fox, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Fiat Vox.